Keep a steady tone and show emotion. You are innocent and you are trying to help, okay? If something annoys you, just pretend it doesn't happen. Annie, are we clear? Annie, are we clear?
Yes, I understand. Jury called to order. Case of Paul Sheldon versus Annie Wilkes. Are we ready to begin?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
In the trial of Paul Sheldon versus Annie Wilkes, Paul is accusing Annie of domestic violence, mental and emotional abuse. Annie is saying that she did not do any of these things, but only cared for Paul and nursed him back to health. Paul is saying that Annie did not only drug him and abused him, but cut off his foot, almost killed him, and forced him to write a book. Annie is countering that she had done none of these things, and now, due to the fact that these two were the only two present while the crimes being tried were committed, they will be our only witnesses we have today. Prosecution, your opening statement.
Your Honor, members of the jury, my name is Jonathan Knox, and I will be prosecuting Annie Wilkes in this case. I intend to prove that Annie Wilkes did commit the crimes against my client, Paul Sheldon, physically, emotionally, and mentally scaring him and abusing him in many ways. Thank you.
Defense, your opening statement.
Your Honor, members of the jury, my name is Alice Campbell, and I will be defending Annie Wilkes in this case. My client is being accused of being mentally, physically, and emotionally abusive to Paul Sheldon. However, she nursed Paul back to health after his accident and gave him medications. I intend to prove that my client was not, in fact, abusive to Paul, and that Paul was actually mentally unstable and overdosed on medications and imagined Annie abusing him. Thank you.
Prosecution, you may call your witness to the stand.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to call up Paul Sheldon to the stand. Left hand on the book, right hand in the air.
Repeat after me. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly, declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. So, can you describe your overall experience with Annie?
Well, after she found me in my car, which skidded off the side of the road, she brought me to her house. While I was there, she not only physically abused me multiple times, but she locked me in her guest room like I was an animal locked in a cage, like an African bird in a zoo. She also forced me to burn my manuscript of my new book, Fast Cars.
So, Paul, you just described to us the many times Annie physically and emotionally abused you. Now, can you give us more examples of Annie physically abusing you?
Well, one time she was really angry, she hit my leg, which may I remind you was brutally mangled because of the accident. She also cut off my foot when she found out I snuck out of the room, and she also chopped off my thumb.
That's a lie! Defense, sit down. Now.
Cock-a-doodle.
Paul, you also told us about how Annie emotionally and mentally abused you. Can you describe it?
She kept me locked up in the same room like an animal for months. She forced me to burn my manuscript of Fast Cards, which I spent so many days working on. She made it seem as though it was my fault for all of the bad things that were happening to me. Like it was my fault that she cut off my foot and chopped off my thumb. Like it was right or die. I also saw her book of memories, which terrified me beyond belief.
So, you mentioned that she forced you to burn the manuscript of Fast Cars, correct?
Yes.
Alright, one second. This is the burnt manuscript, correct?
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, folks, it's here burnt to the point of no return. She threw his past month's work into the garbage. Just like as you could so clearly see, she chopped off his foot and cut off his thumb. Thank you. That is all.
Defense, you may begin cross-examination.
Can you describe the night of the accident?
Well, I don't remember much, but I do remember I was driving on the highway and all of a sudden the roads got really slippery and then everything went black. And the next thing I remember is Annie supposedly saving me.
What were you doing prior to the accident?
Well, I was in my hotel room drinking when I decided to head home early.
Wait, did you say you were drinking?
Yes.
So that means during the accident you were intoxicated.
Yes, but
Therefore, anything that you say is incorrect because you were intoxicated. When you first met Miss Wilkes, you were under the influence, and therefore, since you were driving while under the influence, you were irresponsible in the first place.
yeah.
So, Paul, Annie nursed you back to health after your accident, did she not?
Yeah, I guess.
And she gave you pain medication for your injuries.
Yeah, however, she gave me so many pills. At one point, I overdosed, and I developed an addiction to them.
So you're telling me you developed an addiction to these drugs that could have influenced your thoughts and actions? And tell me, did you sneak out of your room to go to the bathroom to get more pills?
I did sneak out of my room, putting myself through much more pain to get more medication because Annie left me alone for days.
How are you certain Annie left you alone purposely? Maybe she was going to get you more food or more painkillers.
She went to her laughing place upstate, whatever that is. She wouldn't need to go to the store, and if she didn't throw the soup at the wall or force me to swallow soap water.
So Paul, you're telling me you stole medication, Novril, a painkiller which causes a high. Then you were under the influence of drugs. The drugs that you stole, developed an addiction, and took. Everything you were saying that happened can be completely made up and imaginative because you were under the influence, you were high while all these events were so-called happening. You could have lost your thumb and your foot in the accident. However, you were too high and thought that Annie was doing it to you.
I swear she did that stuff to me. She left me.
If I recall correctly, you mentioned that your fast car manuscript was burned. However, that could have easily been burnt by a candle or fire, not by Annie doing that. But however, since you were under the influence of drugs, you could have easily imagined Annie burning it instead of a candle.
No, she made me burn a few parts and then she threw the rest into the fire.
Mr. Sheldon, how can we believe anything you say? From the moment that we first found you in the accident, you were intoxicated, and then you overdosed and had an addiction to drugs that caused you to be high. All your facts could be false. The chopping off your foot and thumb, the burning of your manuscript, her physical abuse. This is all a lie because you were high. And Your Honor, I am done here. Thank you.
No, you have it all wrong.
You may step down.
Annie, Paul just confessed to everything. I'm not going to ask you all the questions. We don't need to. We have this in the bag.
I know, that dirty bird, he did it.
Defense, you may call your witness to the stand.
Thank you, Your Honor. I call up Annie Wilkes to the stand. Left hand on the book, right hand in the air.
Repeat after me. I do solemnly,
I do solemnly,
sincerely and truly declare
sincerely and truly declare
and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Annie, can you describe the night you found Paul?
I knew Paul wasn't in New York. I'm his #1 fan, and his fans always know where he is. When I found Paul on the side of the road, I knew that he needed help. And with the ongoing snowstorm, I knew that I probably wouldn't get to the hospital in time, and that's why I took him back to my house. I'm a certified nurse, so I figured that I'd be able to help him. My love for Paul as a writer was really what motivated me to be there for him at this hard time.
So, what were the positives of you helping Paul?
As his caretaker, I was constantly able to be there for Paul. In the accident, he lost his left foot and thumb, which he doesn't remember, but when we were at my house, I was able to cauterize the wounds. Also, I had medicine in my home to give him whenever he was in pain. After a couple of weeks and Paul was finally able to stay conscious again, I helped him to start writing again. I knew that it was important for him, even though he didn't want to, and that's why he's saying I forced him.
Annie, where did you get these medications from?
Well, I was a registered nurse, so I'm allowed to have these in my home.
See, jury, she is not a psychopath, but instead a registered nurse who looks out and cares for people in need. Annie, what do you have to say about the burning of the Fast Cars manuscript?
Well, I found a copy in Paul's bag when he first got to my house and brought it to him so that he can continue writing. I thought it was important. But at the time that I brought it to him, he said that he would write it, but he was cold, so that's when I brought him over to the fireplace, and that clumsy, dirty birdie dropped it into the fireplace.
Therefore, she did not force Paul to burn the manuscript, but instead he accidentally dropped it. A total accident. Thank you, Your Honor, that is all.
The prosecution, you may begin your cross-examination.
Miss Wilkes, is it true you had a book titled Memory Lane filled with events of your murders?
I do have a book named Memory Lane, but it's filled with photos from my childhood.
That's a lie! It's a book of murders!
Objection!
Overruled. I'll allow it.
Alright. Memory Lane. As you can see, this book is filled with newspaper articles filled with the people that Annie has murdered.
No, it's not. It's filled with a bunch of photos with Annie with a group of people.
Yeah, that's my ma. What a cockadoodie. And my brother.
No! That's not the right book! She switched them! She tampered with the evidence!
Please control Paul! Somebody shut him up.
Paul, stop. In this Memory Lane book, there should be a newspaper article about Andrew Pomfrey, or whatever you pronounce it, your former lover who you murdered, and the death of a police officer who was found dead, butchered by a lawnmower on your lawn. Care to explain this? Care to explain this?
Yes, Andrew was my former lover, but he left me and I didn't even know he was dead. As for the police officer you're talking about, I don't even recall meeting him. I'd also like to state that I'm not a violent person at all and never have been, even when I was younger.
That's a lie! I was watching you from the window!
Stop, Paul, sit down. So, you're telling me you're Paul's #1 fan?
Yeah, I am.
So you read all his books?
Everyone.
So you're telling me you read Paul's latest book in the Misery Chastain series, Misery's Child?
Mm-hmm. But I was so angry when he killed off Misery. It just wasn't fair. It's not how it's supposed to end.
That's why you forced him to rewrite Misery's Child, so Misery Chastain lives?
After he burnt Fast Cars in the fireplace, I asked him, not forced him, to rewrite it. I just wanted a book where misery lives on.
So, you telling me that now all of a sudden you told Paul to rewrite Misery's Child, but before in the trial you said that you told Paul to continue riding fast cars. So which is it, Annie? Which is it?
I don't know. He's such a cocky attorney. I don't know. Psychopath, crazy lady. I mean, come on. She's
I'm not a psycho.
Alright, and I'm John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever. I mean, come on. But earlier before you were telling everyone that you were helping him continue riding fast cars. Yeah, potato. But now we find out you told him to rewrite Misery's Child into Misery's Return. I mean, that's obvious. That means you forced him. You mentally and physically and emotionally abused him. You cut off his... I am talking here. Give me a second. I'm talking. And I'll be quiet. You chopped off his foot because you wanted Misery Chastain to resurrect because you're crazy.
That's
yeah,
false.
Psychopath. Yeah, tell me another one. Why are you crunching up the papers? Because you're guilty. And you know you're guilty. That's why you're switching out evidence. I see you. I'm not stupid. I'm not stupid. I see you.
Mr. Knox, please lower your voice and control your voice crack.
Is there any further questions?
I guess I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Your Honor.
You may step down. Both the prosecution and the defense have now rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their final arguments. But please remember, what each attorney says is not evidence. However, do listen closely. They are intended to aid you in understanding the case. Will the prosecution please give their closing statement?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the jury, today you have heard a testimony about how my client, Paul Sheldon, has been mentally, physically, and emotionally abused by Annie Wilkes. I want to remind you of some important information that will help you decide on your verdict. Annie cut off my client's left foot and thumb. She not only screamed at my client, but made him feel as if he was the reason why she was doing all these bad things. Please find the defendant guilty of all charges, especially domestic violence. Thank you.
Defense, you may proceed with your closing argument.
These facts include Paul being intoxicated and under the influence of drugs, not being able to realize what was his imagination and reality. Annie is a nurse who found her favorite author injured and decided to help the man recover from his accident. Please find our client, Annie Wilkes, not guilty. Thank you.
Members of the jury, you have heard all of the testimony concerning this case. It is now up to you and your fellow jurors to review the evidence presented. Once you decide what the facts the evidence proves, you must then apply the law as it has been given to you. The domestic violence law provides the criminal rules for punishing those who cause emotional or physical harm to others with whom they have a relationship with. It also deals with the civil protections available to victims of this type of harm. Jury, you may be dismissed to reach a verdict. Have you reached a verdict?
We, the jury, in the case of Paul Sheldon versus Annie Wilkes, find the defendant not guilty of the charge of domestic violence and abuse. We do find that Paul Sheldon is in fact mentally insane and should be placed in a mental institution to recover from his drug and alcohol addiction.
Thank you, jury, for your service today. Court is adjourned. Guards, please take Mr. Sheldon into custody while we call an available mental facility for his care.
No! That's wrong! That's wrong! It's so wrong! How did she get away with it? How? No! She's crazy! She's insane! She took my life!
Yo veo que te gusta el party. I see that you like to ignite it. I see that you like to do the things that you
Ladies, abused.
Yeah. Tell me another funny one. I have it on sale. Woo! Free pancakes for $1. I'm talking. You made me mess up the name of the book. Give me a second. Hey, I'm talking.
Hey, yo, ma! Can I get your number?